Imagine being born into the belly of hell, a floating prison of despair. Your first breath, a gasp of terror amidst the cries of the condemned. This is not a work of fiction. This is the stark reality of Ignatius Sancho, a man whose life began in the suffocating darkness of a slave ship, yet ended as a beacon of light in 18th century London. His story is a testament to the indomitable human spirit, a narrative that defies every expectation and challenges the very foundations of prejudice. Today, we're diving deep into the extraordinary journey of a man who was enslaved, abandoned, and yet rose to become a celebrated writer, composer, and a powerful voice against the tyranny of slavery, leaving an indelible mark on history and shaping the future of a nation. His name was Ignatius Sancho, and the year was around 1729. His birthplace? Not a home, not a hospital, but the grim, reeking hold of a slave ship somewhere on the treacherous waters of the Atlantic Ocean. His mother, an enslaved woman, gave birth to him mid-passage under conditions of unimaginable cruelty. His father, a man brought to that same ship from West Africa, would take his own life rather than endure the chains of enslavement. Can you even begin to comprehend the trauma of such an origin? To enter the world with death and despair as your first companions? The Middle Passage was a conveyor belt of human suffering, a brutal journey across an ocean that swallowed countless lives. Disease, starvation, violence, these were the constant companions of those forced into its depths. For Ignatius, this wasn't just a journey, it was his beginning. Orphaned almost immediately, a tiny, vulnerable life adrift in a world determined to break him. He was a child of the transatlantic slave trade, a stark emblem of its barbarity. Yet, from this abysmal start, a flicker of resilience, an ember of hope, somehow managed to ignite within him. Miraculously, he survived the horrific voyage, arriving in the Spanish colony of New Granada, what we now know as Colombia. There, he was baptized by a bishop who gave him the name Ignatius. Soon after, he was just 2 years old when he was brought to England, becoming a gift to 3 unmarried sisters in Greenwich. These women, known as the Mrs. Montague, were far from kind. They treated him as little more than an amusement, a living curiosity, a perpetual child servant. They stifled his every intellectual inclination, punishing him for reading, for writing, for any attempt to expand his mind. They told him that knowledge would only make him unfit for his station. Imagine being told that learning, growth, and curiosity were a disadvantage, a crime even, simply because of the color of your skin. This wasn't just physical servitude, it was an attempt to shackle his very spirit, to cage his mind. But even in this oppressive environment, the young Ignatius found a clandestine route to knowledge. His hunger for books, for words, was an unquenchable fire. He would secretly devour pages, steal moments to learn, nurturing the seeds of intellect despite the harsh soil he was planted in. Sancho's fortunes took a pivotal, almost miraculous turn when he caught the attention of John Montague, the second Duke of Montague. The Duke, a forward-thinking and genuinely compassionate man, was a stark contrast to his relatives. He lived nearby and often saw the young Ignatius. He was captivated by the boy's sharp mind and insatiable curiosity, noticing the sparkle in his eyes even when he was forbidden from reading. The Duke saw not a servant, but a soul eager for enlightenment. He began to encourage Sancho, providing him with books, recognizing his innate intelligence, and perhaps more importantly, treating him with a measure of human dignity. This was a profound shift, a crack in the wall of his confinement. The Duke's patronage was a lifeline, a glimmer of hope that there was a world beyond servitude. He wasn't just offering books, he was offering a different perspective, a belief in Sancho's potential that no one else had extended. When the Duke passed away in 1749, his wife, the Duchess, continued his legacy of kindness towards Sancho. She took him into her household as her butler, a position of far greater responsibility and respect than his previous role. While still a servant, this was a step up, offering him stability and continued access to the intellectual environment of a noble household. It was here, surrounded by books, art, and intellectual discourse, that Sancho truly began to blossom. He immersed himself in literature, music, and the arts, honing his wit and refining his manners. He absorbed knowledge like a sponge, his mind expanding with every page, every conversation. This period was crucial. It allowed him to cultivate the intellect and social grace that would later define him. He wasn't just learning, he was transforming, becoming the cultured and articulate individual the world would come to know. The Duchess's support was instrumental, allowing him the space and resources to develop his formidable talents. From a desperate child on a slave ship, he was becoming a man of letters, refined and knowledgeable, albeit still under the shadow of service. After the Duchess's death in 1751, Ignatius Sancho found himself on his own, with a small inheritance and a world of possibilities, albeit still a challenging one, before him. He tried to make his way as a valet, but his true calling lay elsewhere. He was a man of letters, a burgeoning intellectual. He quickly gained a reputation in London's burgeoning literary and artistic circles. His wit, his intelligence, and his captivating conversation drew people to him. He was not just tolerated, he was celebrated. This was a remarkable feat for a black man in 18th century Britain, a society riddled with racial prejudices and systemic inequality. He defied every expectation, every stereotype. His presence alone challenged the prevailing notions of race and intellect. He hobnobbed with leading artists, writers, and politicians of the day, including the acclaimed painter Thomas Gainsborough, who famously captured his likeness in a stunning portrait. But Sancho was not just a social butterfly, he was a serious intellectual. He composed music, writing pieces that were performed and published, demonstrating his artistic prowess. He engaged in deep philosophical discussions, holding his own among the brightest minds of his era. His true literary legacy, however, rests on his vast collection of letters. Written to friends, patrons, and influential figures, these letters were not just personal correspondence, they were a window into the mind of a brilliant observer. They were witty, insightful, and often deeply moving. He wrote about daily life in London, about music and art, about family and friendship. But he also used his pen as a weapon against injustice. In these letters, published posthumously as The Letters of the Late Ignatius Sancho, an African, he openly and fiercely condemned the institution of slavery. He wrote with an eloquence and moral conviction that resonated deeply, making it impossible for his readers to ignore the humanity of those enslaved. One of his most powerful letters was written to Laurence Sterne, the famous author of Tristram Shandy, imploring him to use his influential voice against the slave trade. Sancho wrote, "That subject, handled in your masterly strokes, cannot fail of touching every feeling heart, and of giving a perhaps useful, and at least a pleasing, titillation to some other." He eloquently detailed the hypocrisy of a nation that prided itself on liberty while perpetuating such horrific bondage. His observations on British society were astute. He loved the country that had, in many ways, given him his freedom and nurtured his talents, but he refused to turn a blind eye to its moral failings. His critique of human cruelty was sharp, his advocacy for empathy unwavering. These letters became a sensation, a powerful testament to the intellect and humanity of a black man, published at a time when such a voice was desperately needed. It proved, beyond a shadow of a doubt, that talent, intelligence, and moral fortitude knew no racial boundaries. He didn't just write, he illuminated. Sancho's journey from the grim holds of a slave ship to the heart of London's intellectual elite is more than just a personal triumph. It's a profound historical moment. He didn't just exist within 18th century British society, he actively shaped it. He became an icon of the Enlightenment, a living embodiment of its ideals of reason, liberty, and human dignity. challenging the very core of racial prejudices that underpinned much of the era's thinking. His mere presence, his cultured demeanor, his intellectual contributions forced people to reconsider their preconceived notions about race. Here was a black man who was not only educated but also witty, articulate, and deeply compassionate. He was proof that the racist ideologies used to justify slavery were utterly false. What's even more remarkable is that Ignatius Sancho became the first known black man to vote in a British general election. In 1774, and again in 1780, he exercised his right to vote, a right granted to property-owning men. This act, seemingly simple, was revolutionary. It was a tangible assertion of his citizenship, his humanity, and his place within British society. Imagine the significance of this act at a time when the vast majority of black people in the British Empire were enslaved or living in dire conditions. His grocery shop in Charles Street, Westminster, became more than just a place to buy goods. It was a social hub, a vibrant meeting place where intellectuals, artists, and abolitionists would gather. From behind his counter, Sancho engaged in conversations that influenced public opinion, debated the burning issues of the day, and subtly yet powerfully advocated for the abolition of slavery. He used his platform, no matter how humble, to amplify the voices of the voiceless. His advocacy wasn't confined to grand speeches or political rallies. It was woven into the fabric of his everyday life, his letters, his compositions, and his interactions. He didn't just talk about change, he embodied it. His life demonstrated that intelligence, artistry, and moral courage transcend arbitrary lines of race and origin. He was a beacon, showing a path forward, proving that human potential is boundless. His influence wasn't just local, it extended into the broader discourse of the time, subtly shifting perspectives and planting seeds of change that would blossom into the abolitionist movement. He was a living argument against injustice, a quiet revolutionary who used his intellect and humanity as his most potent weapons. Ignatius Sancho died in 1780 at the age of 51, leaving behind a family and an extraordinary legacy. Shortly after his death, his letters of the late Ignatius Sancho, an African, were published, an immediate sensation that became a powerful weapon in the burgeoning abolitionist movement. These letters, edited by Francis Crewe, garnered over 1,200 subscribers, including many prominent figures, and became an undeniable argument for the humanity and intellectual capacity of black people. They demonstrated beyond all doubt that an African man could possess a refined intellect, a keen wit, and a compassionate heart, directly challenging the dehumanizing propaganda of the slave trade. Sancho's story is an enduring symbol of resilience, empathy, knowledge, and courage. It's a narrative that transcends time, reminding us of the incredible strength of the human spirit to triumph over unimaginable adversity. His life serves as a powerful testament to the power of education and self-determination, even in the face of systemic oppression. He was not just a survivor, he was a trailblazer, paving the way for future generations of black artists, writers, and activists. His contributions are a vital part of black diaspora history, offering invaluable insight into the lives and achievements of Africans in 18th century Britain. He reminds us that history is not monolithic. It is a rich tapestry woven with countless individual stories of struggle, triumph, and profound human experience. His story continues to inspire, teaching us that even from the most tragic beginnings, extraordinary lives can bloom. Museums and historical societies today celebrate his memory, ensuring his voice continues to resonate, his message of humanity and justice echoed through the ages. Ignatius Sancho's journey from a slave ship to a literary icon isn't just history, it's a profound lesson for us all about perseverance, the fight for dignity, and the enduring power of the written word. Thanks for watching. Discover more untold stories of resilience and courage by subscribing to Slave Memory Chronicles, hit the notification bell, like, and share.